For the first time in 2022, Mercedes had a race-winning car at the Brazilian Grand Prix, and almost inevitably, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen wasted little time in adding to their infamous list of collisions. The 2021 title rivals fell back into the pack as a result of their clash. While Hamilton recovered to finish a close second to teammate George Russell, Verstappen could only make it back to 6th after pitting for a new front wing and later serving a 5-second penalty. In this video, we're going to explain why the stewards felt Verstappen was at fault, and we'll also get into how we think this decision shows the increasingly specific guidance around wheel-to-wheel combat that was introduced for this year is flawed. If you're watching this, you've almost certainly seen the collision already, so we'll give you the quick version. Verstappen attacked Hamilton around the outside of Turn 1 at Interlagos for second place on a restart on lap 7. He then tried to hang on to have the inside for the second corner, but Hamilton didn't feel he needed to give the corner up, so they collided. The stewards wasted little time in pinning the blame on Verstappen, who responded by asking where he was supposed to go. So why was Verstappen penalised? Why wasn't it considered a racing incident? Or why wasn't Hamilton blamed for not leaving space on the inside when he knew a car was there? The stewards noted several key factors behind their decision. Firstly, they said that Verstappen did not complete the pass he attempted into Turn 1, and they referenced his excess speed caused by braking so late, which they felt compromised his entry into Turn 2. Tellingly, they also said Verstappen made contact with Hamilton, clearly showing that they felt the collision was caused by Verstappen's actions. Interestingly, the stewards referenced that Hamilton could possibly have given a little more room at the apex of Turn 2, but they didn't believe this was enough of a factor in causing the accident. In their eyes, with the help of onboard cameras, the broadcast footage and additional angles from CCTV, Verstappen's actions crossed the threshold to make him predominantly at fault, and in F1's rules, that's all it needs for a driver to pick up a penalty. Ahead of this season, guidance was handed out to manage driving standards in F1. They covered overtaking on the inside and the outside of a corner, and in the case of Hamilton-Verstappen, all that means is they judge the incident based on Verstappen trying to pass on the inside of Turn 2 in isolation. A car overtaking on the inside must have a significant portion of the car alongside to be given space, and part of judging that is whether their front tyres are alongside the other car by no later than the apex of the corner. But alongside the other car is a vague term. Given how far alongside Verstappen was just before the contact, we can now interpret the new guidance to mean the overtaking car must be specifically level with the other car's front wheels. Verstappen's front wheels were pretty far alongside the rest of Hamilton's car, but not quite level with the Mercedes front axle. So as the stewards determined that Verstappen was not fully alongside, that means Hamilton wasn't obliged to give more space. The problem with these rules is that the Hamilton-Verstappen incident should be seen as one continuous move through a corner layout that gives one car the inside for one corner and the other car the inside for the next. The opening sequence of corners at Interlagos regularly creates a multi-dimensional situation that strict guidelines are ill-suited to. In the case of S-bends like this, the guidelines apply similarly for each corner. So Verstappen had to follow the rules for overtaking on the outside into the first part, then the rules for overtaking on the inside of the second part. That's if you take the view that Verstappen was the one doing the overtaking the entire time. Some will argue that Hamilton was the one trying to repass given Verstappen briefly got ahead through the first part of the corner, or at least that the cars could already be considered side by side earlier in the sequence, so how can you then determine who is the one making the overtake in the next part? But as we've already mentioned, in the eyes of the stewards, Verstappen had never successfully completed a pass in Turn 1, so he was still considered the driver trying to make an overtake. Another problem created by this attempt to regulate every millimetre of every racetrack with black and white rules is that it's escalated the growing trend for every collision in F1 to result in one driver being deemed responsible. It seems the racing incident is consigned to ancient history. No longer can a high-profile incident be waved off as one of those things that happens when two fiercely competitive drivers both want the same piece of racetrack. To use this incident as an example, if any pass of Verstappen's front wheels are behind Hamilton's, it's Verstappen's fault. But had he got level with Hamilton's front wheels, it would instantly switch over to being Hamilton's fault. It seems there's no middle ground where nobody can be predominantly to blame. That's a slippery slope that F1 has been sliding down for some time, unfortunately. Some will argue that the new rules for 2022 have at least created a clear approach for the officials to take in judging every collision, and that the rule over the positioning of your front wheels relative to the car you are contesting the corner with allows for each incident to be judged consistently. This clash is the clearest indication yet that in the eyes of the stewards there are no longer any grey areas. When attacking on the inside, unless your front wheels are fully level with those of the car you are trying to pass, it's going to be your fault if there's a collision. But that's too binary, and for the attacking driver, the window of time you have once you realise your attempt isn't going to get your front wheels in line with the other car is often going to be so small, like it was at Interlagos, that there isn't even time to back out. That sounds like a recipe to deter drivers from attempting marginal overtakes, which will just make the races more boring to watch. At the start of this video, we called the collision between Verstappen and Hamilton inevitable. And in their post-race comments, it seems like the drivers shared that opinion. Verstappen was the more vocal on the topic, perhaps unsurprisingly given he was the driver punished, so therefore more likely to feel aggrieved by it. Hamilton didn't give much away. He dodged questions on it from the media and the paddock, saying in the press conference that he didn't have much of an opinion on it, that he thought he was going to have to retire because the hit was so hard, and that in the end all that mattered was that he was able to get back on with the racing. When pushed, he also indicated he had no concerns about racing Verstappen in the future, and said that when you've had the career he's had, you get used to driving with a target on your back, saying it's nothing I haven't dealt with before. As is often the case in these situations, the most revealing comments can be made in Parc Ferme, just after the drivers have got out of the cars and they haven't had any time to either calm down or be told what they should avoid saying. And in that moment, Hamilton simply said, "What can I say? You know how it is with Max." The feeling was mutual. Verstappen said that as soon as he attacked Hamilton, he could tell the Mercedes driver wasn't going to leave him space, so at that point Verstappen knew a collision was inevitable. Verstappen sounded disappointed that after a year without any flashpoints between them, he and Hamilton still can't battle cleanly when they are fighting on a level playing field. He said he'd hoped the ill feeling of 2021 could be forgotten about and that he wanted to finally have a good race with Hamilton. He added that he felt Hamilton could have worked with him to give him a little bit of space and probably still stayed ahead of the Red Bull exiting turn 2 anyway. For those of us watching it, there are a range of emotions you could feel about this relighting of the 2021 on-track fires between Hamilton and Verstappen. For some, it would have been exciting to see them still not giving each other an inch. Others will be angry about it, or frustrated, or perhaps just plain disappointed. From hearing what the drivers have had to say on it, we reckon they both fall into the final group. Verstappen clearly expressed his disappointment that Interlagos 2022 just ended up being a postscript to Silverstone, Monza and Jeddah 2021, or Hamilton's reluctance to respond to questions about it suggests the last thing he wants is for another controversy to flare up between these two. But if Mercedes gets back on terms with Red Bull properly in 2023, it looks like we can expect many more spiky chapters of this rivalry to be written.